Hello, welcome back. I have a tag video for you today. This is the Confessions of a Book Collector tag, which was created by Mike from Bibliophile Bookscape. It is about the honest things every book collector knows but doesn't always admit. So we'll just get right into it here. Number one, I own more books than I can realistically read. In my case, I don't actually own more books than I can realistically read. Uh, I have books that I like. If I didn't buy any books today, if I stopped buying books today, I think that it would probably take me. It really depends on my speed of reading and that sort of thing. Probably somewhere from 5 to 8 years. I'm not really sure exactly, and I'm basing that on what I have read in the past. Uh, so even though I have a lot of books, I have less books than I have read in my lifetime in this house. And so I'm basing it on that really, that I can, that I don't actually have more books than I can realistically read. It would just take me quite some time to read them. And number two, I bought books just because they were beautiful. I wanted to say no to this, but then I got to thinking about it, and I buy quite a lot of books, like coffee table books and photography books and things like that, and I have for quite some time. And I guess if you look at it that way, then yes, I buy books just because they're beautiful, right? Because of their content. Uh, Whereas I don't really go for special editions or books with like the images on the pages, like they have the images printed here. I don't really care about any of that. I don't really care about the beauty of the cover. I mean, I notice it. I notice these aesthetics, but to be honest with you, I happen to find old worn out paperbacks like this to be um, beautiful, and used hardcovers to be beautiful. So I'm kind of lucky in that respect that I don't spend a lot of money on uh, collector's editions and special editions and that sort of thing. Uh, Question three: finding a great book is sometimes more exciting than reading it. Um, I'm going to go with yes on that, because the reality of reading is that you don't know whether you're going to click with a book until you've actually read it. And so I have sometimes looked for certain books for years, looked for them every time I've gone out. And then when I actually get them, it's like, yeah, I got them. It's like the thrill of a hunt, it's like a treasure hunt. Finally finding the treasure. And the trouble with that is that a lot of times I have went on to read those books and been completely unimpressed by them, or they just did nothing for me. I didn't click with them. So sometimes, yes, that is definitely the case. It is definitely the case sometimes that finding a great book is sometimes better than reading it. Number four, I've bought duplicates by accident or because I liked a different edition. So the answer to that is yes on both counts. Uh, I can only remember one time when I have actually bought a duplicate of a book that I've already read. I have a really good memory actually, but I went to a bookstore and I was in the clearance rack, and they had a copy of I think it was If I Die in a Combat Zone by Tim O'Brien. I think his name is Tim O'Brien. Or it might have been the other book, The Things They Carried, which I just, in that moment, I couldn't remember which one I had read. So I bought it. I brought it home. Turns out I had read both of them. And I think maybe in that case, what it is that a lot of novels about the Vietnam War follow very similar structures. They have very similar plots and very similar characters, as you might imagine. And I just got it all mixed up in my head. But I think that is the only time I remember actually buying a book. Whereas sometimes I do go out and I find a book and I just can't remember if I have it or not. But usually I will look it up on my phone. I'll look it up on the internet, and the cover will remind me, or just reading about like the short little summary of the book. Usually that will remind me whether I've read something. Uh, but I have also bought books because I like different editions. So I have several different editions of Sherlock Holmes, for instance. I have a couple of editions of 5 Acres and Independence by M.G. Keynes. I have the the Dover edition with the farmhouse and the moon, and then I also have a copy from the late 30s, which is just green and black. I have several different editions of Alistair MacLean novels because I collect Alistair MacLean novels. And I also do something where if I buy like a cheap or well, most of the books I buy are cheap. Cheap in the sense that it was $1, 50 cents, 75 cents, $2. And let's say it's not in the best condition, like this book in my hand, or actually its counterpart. So I bought an edition of Philip Ziegler's Mountbatten, and it was the big brown paperback. Like it's like a giant brick, and it was in really bad shape. Like I don't even think you could read it. I think it would have cracked in two. And I found this edition, so I bought this, and they were both really cheap. I think this was $1.79. I think the other was probably $1. And since that book really has no, it just can't be read. It's in that bad of a shape. I actually use it. It is right in the middle of this. So this is a board. The second shelf back here is just a board set on 2 dumbbells. And in the middle, to keep it from sagging, I have a bunch of old books that are falling apart, and the brown edition of Mountbatten is the main brick holding that up. I also, for instance, I bought this copy of James Michener's Iberia, and I don't know if this could take a reading. This is from the 60s, and it is really big, and I just don't know if it would survive. So I found this edition for, I can't remember exactly, I think it was $1 something, or $2. And I just thought, well, I would rather have the big hardcover because at least it will not fall apart. And then just this week, so I already had this. This is Gulag Archipelago by Alexander Solzhenitsyn. And this is part 1 and 2. Now, I wasn't entirely sure whether this edition was an abridgment or whether it was 1 part or 2 parts or the 3rd part. But I went out and I found these. Both of these were $2.59, and I was really happy to find them because usually they are quite expensive. Volume 1 and Volume 2 of the Gulag Archipelago. And this, who translated this? It doesn't say who translated this on the front. You would think that it might. Anyway, I bought these because these would be more comfortable to read, and they won't crack, they won't break, they won't fall apart or anything like that. And the truth of the matter is that I've been having like tendon issues in my arms, and so sometimes keeping paperbacks open for an extended period of time, several hours, really makes my arms ache at this point, although they're getting better. Anyway, that had to do with I lifted something I should not have lifted at the early part of this year. Anyway, it's getting better. Anyway, but I just do that. So we will move on to the next question. Number 5. I sometimes rearrange my shelves for fun. The answer to that is no, I don't. I don't rearrange my shelves for fun. I have so many books now that rearranging them is something that I dread. I sometimes will move my books if I think that they are more useful in one configuration than in another. So you might notice right here, I've taken a lot of short story collections and put them all together. Whereas I used to have like I guess I called them 20th century hardcovers, which is what they are. But I just thought that it would be more useful to have all my short stories, or the majority of them, in one place. That's nowhere near all of them. I'm not done with my shelf tour yet, so I'm still waiting to put those together. And when I do, I'm not entirely sure if they will take up maybe 2 rows. I have no idea. But what I dread more than anything is, like, I have been planning on getting another bookcase in my bedroom. And the way that I have it in my head is to have 3 against one wall, and then to have the other one at an angle in the corner. And I am just dreading, because I'm going to have to take all the books off those shelves. And it's not, I don't know, it's a lot of weight. It takes a lot of time, and it's all just to move one bookcase 6 inches or so to the left, because I need that 6 inches of clearance. But no, it's not something I do for fun anymore. Number 6. There are books I'll probably never read, but I'll never get rid of them. So yes, and that has to do with, like, gifts that people have given me over the years. It has to do with, for instance, at my great-grandparents' house, when they were still alive, there was a bookcase at the end of one of their couches. And you always had to pass it to get into their kitchen. And there were my great-grandpa's books, right? And he was a veteran of the Second World War. He fought on Okinawa, and he had military history on this shelf. There were other things on it, but there was one shelf that was just military history. And there were like 3 books in a line. It was a book on Patton, a book on the siege of Moscow in 1941, and a biography of Winston Churchill by Roy Jenkins, all hardcovers. And I don't know if I will ever read any of those books, but I keep them, and I still have them, and I keep them in a line all together, right? Like, it's not all the books on those shelves, it's just those 3 books. But when I see those books in that configuration, I think of my great-grandparents. So I keep those. Number 7. I've bought books simply because they were a bargain. Well, yes and no. It depends. I usually have to be interested in something before I buy it. I think if there's no interest there from me, then, like, if I actually am honest with myself and I say, well, I'm never going to read this, and I know I'm never going to read this, then I won't buy it. But if it is an interesting book that is cheap, then I might buy it. And in fact, after, like, 2020, during 2021 and 2022, all the books in the Goodwills around here were $1 a piece. And so I would go out and find just heaps of books. Like, I would just come home with like 20, 30 books every time I went out. And they were all interesting to me. But the trouble with that is, maybe my interest is not enough to sustain a 200-page book or a 300-page book, right? And that had to do with being cooped up in the house and feeling like, for a while, like, well, I'm never going to be able to go to bookstores again, or, all that stuff that was going on at that time period. But I have really tried to rid myself of that, particularly once books started getting more expensive. And now I really kind of have to rein myself in, not because I can't afford it or anything like that, but it's just, there is something so easy about bringing home a book for $1, right? Bringing home 10 books for $10. Whereas once you get into, like, 10 books for $25 or 10 books for $20, you really kind of just start to look at it in a different way, or I did anyway. Number 8, I like the idea of having certain books, even if I don't plan to read them soon. And the answer to that is absolutely. Absolutely. But in my case, I don't make plans, right? I don't plan to read books. I I don't have any sort of schedule. I have very loose TBRs that I usually don't stick to, and it's because my interests are all over the place, and I never know what I'm going to be interested in reading. So I like to have a lot of different books and a lot of variety, a lot of choices, because there are times when, if I have less books, say if I've been somewhere and I only have 5 or 6 books, or a bookcase of books, I might feel really hemmed in by that. And I really like to be able to leap from one thing to another. And so there are lots of books in here that I have because I don't know when I will get to reading them. Just for instance, let me look over here and see. I have a bookcase right over here. There's also one right here. They're not big ones, they're just smaller. For instance, on the shelf over here, I can see The History of the Kings of Britain by Geoffrey of Monmouth, The Alexiad of Anna Komnene, The Histories by Herodotus. What else do we have? The Tao of Physics by Capra. Things like that, right? I have no plans to read these soon. The Conquest of Gaul by Julius Caesar. Beyond Freedom and Dignity by B.F. Skinner. I think I tried to read that once and I didn't really click with it. But anyway, my point is that I have lots of books around here that I don't plan to read soon, but the way that my mind works, I may want to read some of those books tomorrow. I may pick one up right after this video. I don't know. But I also have books like back here on these shelves. I have several literary works that perhaps are not really my cup of tea, but that I do want to read, right? But I just keep putting them off, and I don't know when I'll get around to reading them. And I'm usually surprised when I do get around to reading them. And then I'm surprised after I have read them, and I think to myself, well, that wasn't hard to read. That wasn't intimidating, and that was pretty good. And I'm really glad I read that. I should have read that years ago, right? And here we have the last part, the ending question. What's one confession you have as a book collector? What's something you do that you think other collectors would understand? Well, I think it's that I buy books that I'm interested in at the time that I bought them. And because of the way that I read, it might take me several years to get to them. And then by the time I get to them, I don't have any interest in the subject anymore, right? Or let's say I went to the bookstore and that whole week leading up to that visit, I had been watching videos on, I don't know, British history, let's say the Duke of Wellington. And so I go to this bookstore and what do you know, they have 2 or 3 books on the Duke of Wellington for $2 each. And I buy those books. And 6 months, a year, 2 years go by, and I realize I don't have that much of an interest in the Duke of Wellington, to be honest. Right? I think that happens to me quite often, actually, and I'm okay with that, because I kind of think of myself when that happens as, and I guess this term comes to mind because I just read this chapter in The Lord of the Rings where Aragorn returns to Gondor as the king. And Faramir hands over his authority to Aragorn, and Aragorn hands it back, but he's the steward of Gondor. I sort of think of myself in those cases as the steward of those books, right? Like, there are many times when I go out and buy books that I'm interested in that I wind up not reading and losing my interest in over time, where the reality of the situation is that those books would have been thrown in the dumpster if I hadn't bought them. And so I kind of look at it as I am taking care of these books for a time. And now I'm going to send them back into the world. And maybe somebody will want them and maybe they won't, but I have kept them safe for X amount of time. Right? I think that's a healthier way to look at it than to look at it as I bought these books and I wasted money and that and that. It's books are not, especially used books, older books like I buy. They are a finite quantity, right? And they get mistreated, they get abused, they get uh, soaked in water, they get all kinds of things, right? Torn up by kids, uh, they get damaged, they get thrown away. Whereas I and other people like myself, we are taking care of these books for a set time, right? I don't know. Maybe I've gone on about that too long. I don't know. Uh, if you can't tell, I'm a little bit sick. Not like an awful sickness or anything, but it's like an underwhelming sickness actually, but it's very low grade and I'm very aware of it today. I guess it's some kind of virus going around. I have no idea. Uh, and that is why today you were getting a tag video rather than a wrap up or something like that. And I've kind of been uh, just doing a lot of reading, so I will actually have quite a few books to talk about in my next wrap up. But anyway, that's enough about me and my illness. Hopefully, I will feel better tomorrow or later today. I don't know. But that was the Confessions of a Book Collector tag, which is created by Mike from Bibliophile Bookscape. And I want to thank him very much for creating this tag. I enjoyed it. And these are questions you don't see very often, so I enjoyed doing it. And I want to thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.